So which one is better?
These brothers my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice. These brothers my guys, know that they fly, know that they ride or die. I keep boys by my side, CJ Ike, now I gotta roll with ice.
Hey, how's it going, guys? It's Paul with Spheric Reptiles, and I thank you so much for tuning in. As you know, I always try to bring something that makes you go, makes you think a little bit, maybe makes you do a little bit more research about your animals that you keep. I got coconut husk all over the place. We fed today, so, you know, a lot of the animals are up and about. It's nighttime. I worked a late day today, and it's a Saturday at that, you know, so. But which one is better? Because you don't care about that other stuff. So are rats better or are mice better for your ball pythons? And I say that in particular to ball pythons because of their nature of eating, right? So they're one of the few snakes that you get that will actually go off a feed. So this video does not cover that. I know it's crazy, right? That I would mention something and not cover it. But this only really covers the nutritional value of rats versus mice. And so ASS will be kind of like a blend of the two. So if you could imagine that, but this video would definitely, hopefully get you to go, maybe ask yourself some questions as to which one you'll feed. If you're going to feed either rats for the life term of your animal, or if you'll start off with mice and transition to rats, or if you'll just stay with mice altogether. And more importantly, if you go to ASS, then you'll determine between the three. But this video will only cover rats and mice. So the video will cover just three things, guys. So three, 1, 2, 3. I'm gonna keep it simple. There's a bonus at the end for those that are interested in breeding their ball pythons, but I'm gonna pretend like this is mainly for pet keepers. So you got 1 to maybe 5 ball pythons, and you're just trying to figure out what you're going to feed them, right? So not for medium to advanced keepers, but mainly for new keepers. The first thing we'll consider is the size and the caloric content of each. So because rats end up being larger than the mice, they're going to have a higher caloric content. So per feeding, per the size of the animal that matches the mid-body girth of the ball python, then you're going to give them more calories. I mean, it makes more sense. The bigger the prey item, the more calories it has. So duh, I mean, shit, I didn't tell you nothing new on that one, but with every meal to ball pythons, it's very important to get in that caloric content, because you got to think about, they have these stomachs that are long. Everything's in a long line, right? So it has to be, right? It's a snake. So if you can feed one prey item that gives them all the nutrition that they need for that size that the snake is, it's always going to be better on the snake themselves, but more importantly on their digestive health over the long term of the lifespan of the snake. So you can imagine if you had a railroad car worth of rodents in there, so maybe you had 3 mice back to back to back. Well, they're not all going to be in there from head to butt or head to tail, snout to tail. They will be overlapped. They might be, you know, completely overlapped. So that'll put additional stresses on the snake's digestive system. The snake will stay on the hot spot until it's all digested, but over the lifespan of the snake, if you start that out early, it would be like if you went to McDonald's and just ingested 3 or 4 quarter-pounders per meal instead of just getting one appropriate size burger. I mean, I guess I should have said cheeseburgers, right? I don't know if you would eat 3 or 4 quarter-pounders. That would be the 1, and the cheeseburgers would be the 3, right? So, whereas if you were to give a mice, you know, so then you see the flip side. So as the snake grows, you get more caloric content per feeding item, and that one item is actually going to be better for the snake. It just is the way it is. So now I will discuss the nutrition per prey size. Now, it's important to say per prey size because if you consider the size of an adult mouse, it packs a punch for the nutrition. Like if you were to compare it to a rat pup, the mouse is going to win 100% of the time because it has developed and mature bone marrow. It has, more protein per feeding, whereas a rat pup is not even, it still hasn't been weaned yet, so it's still drinking milk. It's not eating whole food, so the protein content will be very small. The quality of the nutrition, the vitamins and whatnot would not be there, right? So if we compare those two, per prey size, that's the only time that the mouse actually outweighs the rat. But I want you to know one thing about mice. They are very high in protein and very low in fat. So if you have an obese snake, it may be one way that you can actually wean it down and continue feeding it. So you could give that obese animal that maybe you've accidentally overfed, or maybe you bought it and it was overfed, who knows. But you can feed it that one adult mouse, and you can actually help it to lose weight over time by feeding it either one prey item or one mouse per week or one mouse every other week. And over the course of the year, if you can get it to keep eating, the metabolism of the snake will stay just high enough to where it'll continue to burn, especially if you're able to provide your animal, your ball python, with some enrichment. So take it out, hold it, or put it in a playpen. However you provide enrichment, that exercise will help burn the calories for the snake to help it lose weight, just as it would humans. Now, if we are to compare that mouse to a rat, then once we get past that rat pup size and get into the wean rat, something that's actually eating food on its own, to where you can gut load it with proper nutrition, or you can buy it from a reputable source, or you can feed frozen thawed from a reputable source that has provided the nutrition for the animal before you feed, then that rat will outweigh it, because for one, it has more calories. The protein is going to be higher just because of the sheer mass of the animal and the muscle tissue, and that's where the protein's coming from. And once that animal becomes a small rat and starts getting into the more mature phases, then that bone marrow structure, which is what they need too for that red blood cell, and just the actual bones themselves provides that calcium for the snake, for their skeleton, and then the embryos or the eggshells that they're developing. That's actually going to play a better role for that animal over the course of time versus if you were to feed one mouse per the life of the snake. So if you have a snake that is 1,700 grams, and that goes back to number one, so fewer feeding. So you could give them 3 or 4 mice, but you don't know how those mice will stack up. Maybe they swallow them all backwards, and now it's really irritating that digestive system. But the rat packs more per punch than the mouse. Even though the mouse has higher protein and, remember, lower fat, the rat is more even, so it has a high amount of fat, high amount of protein, and a high amount of calories with equal amounts of nutrition, which are a little bit higher than those that you would see with a mouse. Okay, so the big thing, the major reason why I really like to choose, so you can make a choice for yourself, and that's what this video is for, is that when your ball python is transitioning from a hatchling, so anything, I would say 200 grams and below, into a juvenile, to a subadult, to an adult. Those are the 4 different growth phases. Then I think that the rats provide a better transition that the snake is already familiar with, that you can stick with. So what I mean by that is, if you get your animals on rat pups, frozen thawed or live, this video isn't covering frozen thawed or live, it's just covering the nutritional value of the rodent. So if you can get your animals on those rat pups in the beginning and their hatchling phase, they're already used to the taste and the smell of rats. They're not used to the taste and the smell of mice, which seems like it has a greater food drive component for the animals in general. But if you can get them on that, as they transition from, it can actually move with them. So as you move from the hatchling, you got the rat pup. When you go to the juvenile, now you got the wean rat. And then as you go from the wean rat up to the subadult, and I mean a bigger subadult. So I'm talking any animal above 1,000 grams to maybe 1,400 grams, 1,500 grams. That wean rat's going to be the appropriate size, I think, just because less is always better when it comes to feeding a snake. But When you go up to that, then the small rat will kick in, and then after 1,500 into 2,000, then you run into small, medium, or depending on the size of your snake, one large prey item, one large rat. Normally, rat pup to medium rats probably good enough for your ball python. You don't want to overfeed them because they still need room for those gastric juices and acids, the gastric acids to move around the animal. And so if you can imagine if you were to just pack in something in there, then there's very little room and it causes great stress and discomfort for that ball python. Now, if we flip that over to the mice, now the mice, if you wanted to transition those better, then that actually would be an easier transition because mice it seems like there's a greater drive for the ball pythons to eat mice as well as African soft-furred. I'm not throwing them in there because remember, this is only comparing rats to mice, but those mice seem like the way that they attack them, it's like candy, man. So that's one way. If you have an animal that you're trying to get to eat, then you can actually start them off on the pinkies a lot faster, especially if you have a smaller hatchling, something around 35 grams or 40 grams, even though they can eat a rat pup, I mean, pretty much immediately because they're already born at like 8 or 9 inches, right? So, but if you do that, then you're going to guarantee for that smaller animal that you're giving them the protein that they need, and they're having more frequent feedings anyway because they're developing their digestive system. So it might be a little less harmful or harsh on their system, and it's more nutrition per prey item at that age. But again, after you get into the juvenile stage, then that's when you have to make the choice of whether you're going to either stick with the mice and be stuck with the mice, or you're going to switch to the weaned rats and then start growing your animal out in rats, which if you were to chart that with a scale, you'd see that those that are on rats are significantly larger. They might be a third or a half, double the size of those that are on mice if you're feeding one prey item per feeding. So, but there again, that's a choice that you got to make, right? So, for the bonus, now when it comes to breeding, so this is something separate. So we cover those 3 things. They're done, right? They're done. Now when it comes to breeding, now something that I've seen and something that I've researched before we ever started pairing up animals and breeding them was, okay, I really wanted to know that feeding schedule. That was when it was most important to me because snakes they're only one cylinder, right? What goes in, just like us, one cylinder, what goes in and what goes out. But we have different places for stuff to go. They don't have arms, they don't have legs, they only have a head and a cloaca, right? So when you're breeding your females, right, when they get to 20 to 25 millimeter follicle development, whether you can tell that by palpating or you use an ultrasound, then you want to, before they start going off food, you really want to increase the feedings of that animal. It's like, so from when you notice them at 15 to 25, you really want to increase those feedings. And the only way that you can really do that and still have them developing eggs in that space where the digestion is right in front of it is to drop the size. So if you're on a medium rat or a small rat, go ahead and drop down to a weaned rat and just feed them every 5 days. Guaranteed they'll be hungry anyway. They don't know what's going on. They know that they had some good time, some whoopee time, and they're developing these follicles. And what that'll do is that'll provide nutrients for that developing follicle and those eggshells because they need that calcium, and the mom will still have the nutrition because remember, if she doesn't have enough fat stores, she will reabsorb those follicles that she's developing because she has to stay alive, right? And she has 2 strings of follicles, one develops per cycle, so that she has a backup, right? But I don't know if you guys knew that or not, but that's just snake anatomy. If you don't know that, go ahead and do some research and find out. So that works well. So increase the feedings with weaned rats, dropping down from small rats or medium rats to the wean, and you'll find that you have a better go at it. It's less intimidating, and then when they do go off of it, then you're actually able to feed that weaned rat to a lot more animals than you would that small or that medium rat if you have multiple ball pythons, so if you're breeding. Now, when it comes to males, bonus. So the males, Normally, I try to get them, you know, get their fat reserves up. I don't want them getting above 1,200 grams, right? I do have a couple that are above 1,200, but they were just voracious eaters when they were younger, and they just seized the day and the opportunity, and so they grew. However, once they start breeding, if they're on rats, they're more likely to discontinue those rats at some point around the same time that the female or the dam discontinues her rats, which is weird, right? I mean, somebody still need to eat. But what I found through just research and trial and error is that when I get ready to start breeding them, I transition those males over to mice, right? I transition them over to one jumbo mouse, frozen, thawed, or live per week. And so I know that that's enough for them to digest it and have 3 days before I pair them up again for 48 to 72 hours. And they always stay on food. Even reluctant males still go for the mice. And so that's just something that I found is that when I'm breeding them, then that male needs sperm production. And the number one way to get sperm production is to continue to eat. So to make sure that that male stays lean and develops sperm from protein, I feed the mouse, because you remember that the mouse is high in protein and low in fat. So, you know, it plays out well. And then I generally will keep those males because by that time they're adults. I don't need them to get bigger. And I just feed them one jumbo mouse per week. You know, so males only get about 3 feet on average. A good sized male will be anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 grams. And a female, on the other hand, they need the larger prey items because they're going to get around, 2,000. Adult will be about, a full grown adult would be 1,600 grams to 2,000 and then on up. So you can end up with a 3,300 or 3,500 gram ball python. So that's what I got, guys. I hope that this was helpful for you. If it is, please let me know. If you got some other suggestions and tips, please let me know that as well, so that when others tune into the channel and they read the comments, they can get some feedback as well. I'm pretty open with it. Anytime someone has a good idea, I love it, because to me, this is all just community, right? So yeah, enjoy your time, man. And I'm tired. I went to work. I worked like crazy, but I tell you what I'm gonna do this weekend. I'm going to enjoy the time I spend with my reptiles, and I'm damn sure gonna just relish the time that I have with my family. All right, guys, thank you.